Hello, I'm Penny Thornton and I'm talking astrology. Specifically on this video, I'm going to be talking about the new moon in Pisces on the 2nd of March, 2022. But as always, I'm going to be looking at that new moon in the setting that it is, which means checking out all the other really quite important influences and, applying them generally and also looking at them, as I do a little bit later, sign by sign. So let's get rolling. So the new moon, like all new moons, is about a new beginning. We always begin something new on the new moon, and it depends really where this new moon is in your chart, whether you are a Pisces, so a new moon is very significant for all Pisceans, or whether you have Pisces rising, maybe, again, that's happening in your first house, or all of us have Pisces somewhere in our charts. Even there are no planets in Pisces, we've got it in that horoscopic circle. And of course, when the sun, the moon, and the planets all move through Pisces, they're moving through that area of our horoscopes and bringing it to life. And it may be that we do have an opportunity as the sun goes through Pisces, particularly, to really connect with all things Pisces. And when we think about this new moon, the sun conjoined to the moon, occupying the same part of the zodiac, then we think about Pisces as a whole. This is one of those signs that is a very fluid sign, very inspirational. It's a water sign, so it's all about feelings and intuitions. And the other thing about Pisces is that it is the last sign of the zodiac. So we've been through all 12 signs. By the time we come to Pisces, that's the last one, which is why sometimes it's called the dustbin of the zodiac, which isn't fair at all. I think probably what we're looking at really with Pisces is that it has the whole of the zodiac experience in it. So it's a very wise sign, a very complex sign, because you pass through every other sign of the zodiac, and here you are processing it, distilling it, and experiencing it through Pisces. So this new moon in Pisces brings us to the attention really of all things Neptunian as well, because Neptune rules the sign of Pisces. So we are in divine territory with Pisces. It's a time when perhaps we're not so concerned with the reality of things. We want to be taken out of ourselves. We want to connect with our spiritual selves. We have more of a feeling for art and music, and we probably want to explore our unconscious mind as well, because as you know, I'm very keen on the unconscious mind. It's the repository of all things that we see, hear, and think about when our conscious mind is engaged elsewhere. So it's a very important area. Pisces, ruled by Neptune, the lord of the underwater world, the oceanic depths, and actually rivers too are also under the sign of Pisces. And when we think about rivers and oceans, we think about sometimes on a clear and beautiful day how still everything is, and Pisces can be a remarkably still center. But then when the winds blow and things get a little bit rough, then we see the other sort of darker side of Pisces, which is quite stormy and temperamental. So one of the things about this new moon is that it is very close to the planet Jupiter, because of course Jupiter went into Pisces at the end of December. So this might be a very beautiful thing to actually look at. Now, I've got an image here that I think is rather beautiful because it gives the idea of the new moon and also the planet Jupiter just up to the right of it. But of course, on a new moon, you can't actually see anything at all. You have to wait a couple of days for that sickle shape to start revealing itself in the sky. And then you might be able to see that very bright planet Jupiter sort of nestling quite close to the moon. But the other thing, of course, in interpretation, when we think about what does the new moon conjunct this mighty planet, this planet of expansion and joy and inflation. Don't let's forget the negative side as well. What does it mean for us? Well, it means plenty. Now, I'm going to get a little bit more into that in general in a minute, but what I want to do now is take a look at the new moon in the context of all the other planets in the horoscope. So here we are. Yes, I know I've set it for London again, but the only reason I've set it for London is because we can see the sun and the moon together in the descending part of the horoscope. They are setting, if you like. The sun is setting, the moon close to it. And we can also see just above that, in that right-hand section of the circle, we can see Jupiter. And above Jupiter there, we can see Neptune. So we see this constellation here, if you like, Sun, Moon, Jupiter, Neptune, which is a very, very grand, proud, all sorts of kind of inspirational kind of messages coming from this particular collection. Now, if we look down below there for a minute or two, we can also see, and this is in the 4 o'clock position of the chart, we can see Mercury conjunct Saturn. In fact, they are almost exactly conjunct at the moment we have that new moon in Pisces. If we look a little bit further below that, in the 5 o'clock position, we can see Venus, Mars, and Pluto. And if you look at those numbers, you'll see 27, 27, 27. In other words, there's a massive conjunction there. Venus and Mars conjunct Pluto. Now, also looking at this chart, if we cut out the nodal axis, and the node is like that omega sign in the sort of 12 o'clock position, and you know the nodes aren't planets, they're just points, want of a better word, quite important points, a lot to do with fate and destiny, our past and our future. But when we consider how planets are grouped together, we don't include the nodes in that grouping. And I think you can see quite clearly, you know, this is a very tight shaping in a way. We've got Uranus at one end, Venus at the other. It's what we call a bundle shaping. And this also means that it's a time of kind of concentrated energy. And that what we might find at this time is that everything is very full on. There's no kind of halfway soft focus touches here. There are things that are really intense, and maybe we ourselves also feel intense. So when I look at the new moon and I look at Jupiter here in the chart, I think of expansion, growth, and joy, things that we all like. And as you could see from the image of the new moon and the planet Jupiter, or planet in the sky, it's got a kind of very beautiful feel to it. And so this is a sort of beatific new moon. And we've spent a lot of time this year groveling around in dark and difficult circumstances. And when we see a thing of joy like this, it's a great relief. And I want to hold on to that a bit, because everything in astrology counts. We look at everything in its individual sense, and then we kind of balance it together. We synthesize it, which I'm going to be doing very shortly. On its own, this sun, moon conjunction, conjunct Jupiter, and not far away from Neptune, we're looking at inspirational, we're looking at all things that make us feel that kind of expand itself. It's a wonderful thing if we're into expanding our consciousness, or we want to have a connection with other people. We want to find soul-to-soul connections with people. It's wonderful if we're creative and we want to get into our creative spirit, because this new moon in Pisces is all about that kind of creative expansion that we can have. But of course, that new moon isn't on its own. We look at Mercury and Saturn. That's a difficult combo. If we look at the best side of a Mercury-Saturn conjunction, then we're looking at being able to figure things out. When we've got Mercury and Saturn, we like to go from the beginning through the middle and get to the end of it. It's a very practical and pragmatic combination. And so that lends itself to the overall picture. This is a time when we're looking at things pragmatically as well. But Mercury-Saturn conjunctions can be kind of depressing. And so it's not going to feel, even though we have that beautiful Sun-Jupiter energy, I'm afraid there's also going to be some reality in here, and it's going to be a hard reality. All of us in some way are going to be facing an unpleasant reality, and we just have to deal with it. There's no good pretending it isn't there. We just have to get down and deal with it. And the news at the time of this new moon could be kind of somber. You know, we're watching our news programs, our news providers, and it's as though everything is looking kind of good. And there's another reason why things are going to be difficult in this early March period, because we're looking at that Venus-Mars-Pluto conjunction. Now, Pluto, as you know, is the great transformer of the planets. When we think of the image of the phoenix rising out of the ashes, always with Pluto, there's a process of elimination going on, which creates a space in which new things can grow. It's what we might call creative destruction whenever we're looking at Pluto, but it's not easy. There's no such thing as a fun Pluto aspect. They're always challenging in one way or the other. And what's been happening, and let's come back to me again now, because we've been looking at that chart for a while, really since just after Christmas, we've had a lot of kind of planetary action with Pluto, and we need the personal planets to really connect with Pluto to bring its message to us. It doesn't mean very much on its own. We have to get the Sun, the Moon, Mercury, Mars, Venus connected to Pluto to bring its message to us. And we've had a lot of this going on really since Christmas. So on the one hand, we could look at the ability to get to the very bottom of things, to get to the core of issues. So if we look out in a general sense out there on the globe, we're going to get perhaps scandals breaking, or we're going to get news finally that reveals something that we've been waiting to find out. And it may be the point at which various leaders or nations decide, you know what, we're going for this. We're going to confront this. We're going to deal with it. So it's a very, very tough energy. And again, if we bring it back to ourselves and how this stellium is going to impact our own lives, well, of course, it's going to impact it more if we've got something at 27 degrees of a sign, especially Capricorn, Cancer, Aries, or Libra. Then this is going to be right in our front garden. You know, we're going to be dealing with a mighty, challenging issue. We're confronting something. And in fact, the essence of a sort of Venus-Mars conjunction with Pluto, or a Mercury conjunct Pluto, a Sun conjunct Pluto, is that one word, confrontation. And why it's a good word is that we can use the idea of confrontation as conflict, can't we? We can look at that as combat and conflict, and maybe that's in there. But we can also look at it as confronting something in its totality, its reality, and what it means. So it has several meanings, this word confrontation. But I would advise you really from the very end of February, sort of the end of the Winter Olympics, this particular group of planets is going to be getting stronger and stronger. And so these words, well, this one word, confrontation, is going to be a good word to throw around. Now, to move a little bit more forward, the exact Sun-Jupiter conjunction takes place on the 5th. So that's the day when the Sun and Jupiter are at their closest. And there's always something good newsy about a Sun-Jupiter conjunction. And certainly if we're looking at the astrology and we want to make use of this particular time, if we have a really passionate ambition, there's something we really want to do, then we can harness this Sun-Jupiter aspect, if you like, along with all that Pluto kind of connection we've got, and really put our hearts and souls into doing something that we want so much to be able to do. And yes, sometimes things just happen and we have an enormous stroke of good luck, or something else happens that sort of opens doors for us. But we must also remember that Jupiter inflates. So situations get out of control when you put a Sun-Jupiter conjunction together like this. So we've got to look at the full picture. We can't just look at Jupiter, the good guy. We also have to look at what it means if it's in its negative expression. Then things get out of control. There's just too much of everything. And when we think about what's been going on in the world, I mean, certainly in Great Britain, it's the same in the States. I'm not sure about every other country in the world, but inflation is going crazy. And that's good old Jupiter. And there's another reason why I find this very interesting. We've got the idea of the Sun and Jupiter, and the Sun is going to move towards Neptune by the 13th of March. And one of the things that's happening is this shortage of gas. Gas prices have spiraled, and that is so Sun, Neptune, Jupiter. And although, you could wax poetic about a Jupiter-Neptune conjunction, which is going to be exact in April, on April the 12th, in fact, we've got to really think of the things that are going on in our world and seeing that Jupiter-Neptune conjunction is an expression of what's going on with gas. And we think about Russia, we think about China, we think about what's going on in our individual countries with the price of energy. Then we're going to point a finger at that Jupiter-Neptune conjunction. And that's what we're also going to be bearing in mind around the time of the new moon, that things are going to maybe scarily escalate. And I don't want to deprive us all of our moments of joy, but we've got to look at the full picture. And of course, if we come back to the day of the new moon itself, the moon will pass from the Sun over Jupiter and then to Neptune. So we're looking at, the next, day or so. And that's also going to bring to bear the effect of Neptune, Jupiter in our lives, in our individual lives, and in our collective lives as well. One more thing I want to say before I start to look at it sign by sign is that the Sun and Neptune, when we get these Sun-Neptune conjunctions, squares, oppositions, it's often something to do with COVID as well, because Neptune is the signature on COVID. So around this time of the new moon and up to the middle and perhaps even the latter end of March, we may have some very important developments linked to COVID. Now, whether that means, as people hope, we're coming out the other side of it, or whether we've got some more stuff to deal with, another variant, something coming up now that's even more challenging than perhaps what we've seen before. We've got to keep our options open here, but remember, with anything Neptunian, it's a mirage. We're not really seeing the reality, especially around that 13th of March time. Remember to, check the reality, have lots of reality checks, because the information we're being given, what we think, may be only a slight representation of the truth, a little bit like an impressionist painting. We don't see everything in clear-cut lines, seeing an impression. So that really is my kind of rundown for this period of this video, looking at it all from the different perspectives. And so now I'm going to take you through sign by sign what this new moon means. And what I want to say here is that I do periodically get asked this idea, well, I've got this sign rising, surely I should be reading that sign for my forecast. And I always say no, because when I write my forecasts, I do it as though I am that sign. I have taken on the trappings of that sign. I am that character. I am ruled by this planet or that planet. So I'm looking at the astrology through the lens of Pisces or the lens of Leo. And that's why it's important to just read your sun sign. But of course, I do kind of change this up a little bit when I look at where the new moon is in your chart, because this is a new moon in Pisces. And if you've got Pisces rising, yes, it is a new moon in your first house. So it's really up close and personal. This is about you personally, your appearance, your wishes, your thing. This is about everything extremely personally and subjectively taken. So a new moon means perhaps a new development, a new part of you emerging. And when we think about the appearance, is it as kind of superficial as a new hairdo or a new outfit or a new image on your social media? You're keen to bring a new version of yourself into being. And that's a really good thing. We need to do this periodically. Otherwise, we get very stuck in ourselves. So whether you have Pisces rising, the new moon in your first house, or whether you are a sun Pisces, and this new moon is, of course, in your sun sign, we're looking at things to do with rebranding yourself, having a look at who you are and what aspects of yourself you wish to change and bring forward. And yes, there may be a lot of new chapters opening for you personally. Now, if we go to the opposite sign, we look at Virgo. For Virgo, or those of you with Virgo rising, you've got this new moon in the 7th house. So it's all about relationships. It's all about your relationship with other people. And because it's a new moon and a new beginning, yes, new relationships can begin, whether they're working relationships, romantic relationships, friendships, whatever they may be. Your relationship with a company could be starting off with a new company. So all these things are about new beginnings linked to other people. And even, when I talk about companies, that's also a sense of you joining with another entity. So it's also about new beginnings or new cycles beginning in your established relationships. And just like I was talking about upping, changing your image, if you've got it in the first house or in Pisces, here in Virgo, we're looking at changing up your relationships and do a kind of spring clean. We want to look at things that give our relationships a new look. And of course, it can mean that new developments are happening so that a relationship now enters a new level. It's notched up a bit. There are new beginnings in an existing relationships. And it's good really to, if you're a Virgo or you've got this new moon in the 7th house, to think about refreshing your relationship life, your social life, things like that, because we need other people. That's how we sort of see ourselves sometimes, through our interaction with other people. Now, if we come to Sagittarius, then we're looking at this new moon in the 4th house. So we're on home territory. Just very basic. Are we looking at a new home? Or are we looking at a new broom in a home so that it's getting a new look, a spring clean? Or maybe you're having work done, so you've got something being added or changed, or some new furniture, or even having, new people within your home. And it's also the family. So we look at new beginnings for the family, especially if you had some kind of family upset, or there's been a difficulty in getting the family together, or certain family members connecting with you. This is an opportunity, this new moon, if you like, to say, look, let's start over. Let's have a family refresh. This area too is about the foundations of the future. So I think this is a good opportunity for you, Sagittarius, or if you've got this new moon in your 4th house, to think about laying down the foundations of new projects, because the 4th house is looking up, if you like, at the 10th house of out there in the world. So there's a link really to one's material ambitions, and they have to start somewhere. They have to be built at ground level. And also a new moon in the 4th house can indicate a new arrival. So we might be looking at a new baby in the family, or somebody coming into the family through marriage. So these are nice new beginnings in this 4th house. Now, if we look at the opposite sign, we come to Gemini, we look at that new moon in the 10th house. So we're right out there in the area of me out on the world. It's my career, it's my place in the world, it's my social status, it's all these kind of things. So there's a new development here. Is it a new job? Is it a change of location for an existing job? Is it a new aspect of the job you do? Or is it an opportunity to look out and think about not just your own personal situation or your family situation, but the sorts of things that you want to be known for in your life, or the things you want to be remembered for? Is there something you have not yet tackled, or some new dimension of your ambitions you wish to realize? Then this new moon, especially this new moon conjunct Jupiter, is an opportunity to really make something happen big time for yourself. We come to the next group of signs. We start with Aries. Well, of course, Aries is the beginning of the zodiac. So we've left Pisces behind and gone into Aries, which means, of course, that new moon is in the 12th house, the area of the unconscious mind. So lots of things for you beginning to take root under the radar. Now, this might be quite literal. You may not want to share the things that you're planning or preparing for. You may want to do things in the shadows, so to speak. Or it may be that you don't realize that opportunities coming to you, you don't realize how important they could be. There's some connection you're not making with the real world, if you like, and seeing that that new chapter could be really terrific for you. But what will happen during the course of the next 2 weeks is that those ideas, those possibilities will take root in your unconscious mind, and they'll either pop up as, random kind of ideas, when you're thinking about something else, when you're on automatic pilot particularly, or perhaps in your dreams, or when you wake up in the morning. You may find yourself thinking, you know what, I've got this great idea. The beginnings of new things are taking root under wraps. Let's just leave it at that. When we come to Libra, your opposite sign, we're looking at this new moon in the 6th house. Now, the 6th house has a lot to do with, well, what we want to manifest in the world and what's going to take work in order to manifest. And yes, we are in the area of work, and we're in the area of well-being. We're in the area of systems, the systems that rule our daily life and the things that make our world go round. So the new moon is an opportunity to really look at each day, or even if you want to look at it at the stretch of a month, and see how much of the day or the time is taken up with repetitive tasks, things you don't think about, they're just there, meeting up with friends that we always meet up with. What are these events really stopping us from doing that we might really like to do? So if you do nothing else, and this new moon is in your 6th house, or you are a Libra, then it's time to really look at the structure of your time and your day, your week, your month, and see what's getting in the way of you being unable to really do things that are important. And I have to say, it's also an area of service, this area. And so it might be an opportunity to do something good that helps your fellows, a little task or gift, or some part of your time that can be done for someone else. Yeah, that's part of the 6th house. So now we come to Cancer, and we are looking at the 9th house for this new moon. I love the 9th house. Well, in fact, I love all the houses that, the 9th, 12th, 6th, and 3rd. They're what I call the seeking houses. We're also always seeking something when we've got this house active. In the 9th house, we're seeking to really stretch our boundaries. We're seeking to get out of our comfort zone. And a new moon gives you an opportunity to do just that, an opportunity to get out of your comfort zone. It may also have something to do with travel, and travel to distant places, or it may have to do with a new possibility that's linked to other countries or people who are far away. And so it is taking you out of your normal everyday self and your everyday possibility. It might also suggest it's a good time to start to learn something, to start a study course, or to improve your skills, maybe a language to be learned, or something about other cultures. It could be almost anything. But this being a seeking house, it's time to really seek things, and maybe even to seek truth. Sometimes with a new moon, it signals a contract when it's in this area of the chart. So maybe a contract is going to be forthcoming around this time or within the following 2 weeks. If we look at Capricorn, then we've got this new moon in the 3rd house. And this has a lot to do with information coming to you, information you're giving out. So it's new information. Is it something that you're going to come across as you surf the internet? Is it going to be a message sent to you, a conversation that you have, or a meeting that you have, because it's going to spark some new ideas and some new possibilities? And Capricorn, you are a sign that really likes to know the territory before you start, talking about what you want to do, or what all those things. You like to have it pretty well mapped out. It's a new moon in Pisces, and this is a really wonderful opportunity to throw out a few ideas and to see what comes back, because it's in exploring things sometimes, having a think tank, that we come out with some really cohesive ideas that we can put to good use. This house too is about learning, and it may be a good time to study particularly, or to learn to drive, or to learn something that's going to help you manage your world. Not the big wide world of extravagant ambitions, but the sort of world of the everyday that you live in, your neighborhood, your surroundings, the information that comes from this new moon, or the information that you deliver. And this is all about enhancing in a new way the world immediately around you. So coming now to my final group, then I'm going to be looking at Taurus. And this new moon for you is in the 11th house. Now, one of the things about this house, it's a very humanitarian area of the horoscope, and we think about ideals and things that are a little, less personal. But it can be understood a little bit better if we think about the house that went before it, which is the 10th house, which is all about reputation and, doing things that make us feel as though we have a place to stand on the world stage somehow. We're up there, we're out there in front of everybody. So the 11th house says, really, what's it all about? Well, what does it mean? So a new moon in the 11th house is exploring, what does it mean? So you could say the achievements or the things you're striving for, they must also be meaningful to you in some way. And this new moon will help you establish that. But of course, it is the humanitarian area of the horoscope. So often we get involved with doing good things and trying to help other nations or other people who need help. We don't think of ourselves so much as what are the wishes of, our wishes in connection with other people's wishes and their benefits. So we're a little bit more concerned with our neighbors. And it may also be that when we look at this house, we're looking at collaborations. So it's you with other people. Is it the start, perhaps, this new moon, of a new project that will be done with a group of people? Or is it just one other person, but it's a collaboration? Or is it something that now develops from something you have been collaborating on that looks a little bit more tangible? There are opportunities to be had when you put collaborations and other people in the mix. Coming now to the opposite sign, and we look at Aquarius. Where was I? I was in Taurus. No, the opposite sign is Scorpio. So here we are, we're looking at the 5th house. And often when we look at the opposite houses, it helps us understand the other one better. Because the 5th house, again, is a very personal area. It's the area of the self, the small self, the inner self. the small you, if you like. It's a very creative center of the horoscope. So we bring forth something of ourselves when we've got the fifth house activated. So a new moon suggests we're bringing forth something new from ourselves. Now, of course, could that mean a new you, a baby? Or could it be a project that feels like a baby? Or is it that you're finding your inner child? And when we find that inner child, especially when that new moon is conjunct Jupiter, it's a sense of joyful creativity, the joy of creativity, the joy of finding ourselves and locating that inner part of ourselves that is so fresh and innocent in a way. And that new moon gives us the opportunity to find that. If you've got it in your fifth house, or you are indeed a Leo, that's where this is leading, to find offerings from the small self, from the self, creative ventures, creative endeavors. And of course, romance can be in this area as well, because we definitely find our heart when we connect with someone romantically. So this may mean a new love affair beginning, or some new endeavor that definitely captures our heart. So final two signs, and we look at Leo now, but I get confused. I'm talking about Scorpio, the fifth house, right? So now we look at Leo, and we're looking at that new moon being in the eighth house of the horoscope. Again, a very mysterious area. When you think about, I talked about the 12th house, and I often call that the house of shadows. So when we look at the eighth house, this is another depth-charged house. It's like a fjord. It's like a loch. So much goes on in there. It's an area of intimacy. So a new moon here could say a new intimate relationship is starting. Or it could say within a close intimate relationship, there's a new level of intimacy available to you. And certainly, like anything else, when we think of the new moon and new beginnings and refreshing things, sometimes our sex lives could do with a bit of a rethink or a reboot. And this is all important to the health of a relationship, like an intimate relationship. We need to restore that connection with each other to replenish and revitalize our close, intimate relationships. It's also, of course, one of the money areas of the chart, and we think about shared investments, we think about shared financial responsibilities. And so a new moon here, it can mean a new financial commitment. It could mean you taking out a mortgage, for instance, or opening up a new credit card or a bank account or something like that, or you and a partner, or you and a business partner, taking some step that requires institutions, companies, financial companies to help you take that new step. And again, sometimes a new moon here, a new moon in the eighth house, will indicate a settlement or an inheritance, something coming to you from other people. Finally, let's go to the second house, and that for you is if you're an Aquarian, or you have this new moon in your second house because you've got Aquarius rising. This is really about, have you look at the eighth house, which is about intimacy, and it's about shared things, and it's about things coming to you. In the second house, we're really doing it ourselves. It's down to us, so that we are creating our own income. We are generating things that will help us find stability in life. And there's an element here in the second house of the value we place on ourselves and how other people view us. And obviously, if other people seem to be valuing us, whether they're paying us a lot of money, or whether they're telling us how much they admire us, or showing that they need us, our value is enriched and we feel good. So this new moon is an opportunity to really locate those things that we think of as adding richness to our life. And yes, on a practical level, It may mean looking at all the things we spend money on and to actually start to look at how we can make ourselves richer by doing something more sensible. It could indicate a new source of income coming to you. And it could also indicate a source of, that opportunity to really feel full of value to other people. So yes, aside from a new source of income, it could be a new way of connecting with other people that makes your value seem greater. So I have been through the whole zodiac, as I tend to do on these things. And I know also how some of you want a little list of, where do I talk about Leo? Where do I talk about Taurus? Well, the thing is that these videos that I prepare for you are a bit of a feast. There's a lot of things going on in them. And often you want to look at that new moon in the context of all the other things that I'm talking about. So another thing that I want to talk about came up slightly when I was talking about the Sun-Jupiter conjunction. And that is because forecasting is hard work. And one of the things that makes it very hard for us astrologers is that there are so many layers of meaning to any one aspect or a planet or any of these things. We have to look at a variety of things, and then we have to sort of go for what we think is most likely. Now, certainly when we're looking at that Sun-Jupiter conjunction, as I said a little bit earlier, it can mean a joyous period. Things are good, things are looking good, but it can also mean inflation, which is bad. And we have to look at both those things. And it reminds me, being in Jupiter territory, of this factor that you sometimes come across with clients, that you're talking about their prospects and you're looking at a beautiful Jupiter transit and you talk about that Jupiter transit in glowing terms, whatever it may mean. And I'm reminded of this that many years ago, a couple of decades ago, actually, I was working with a client and I pointed to a period when Jupiter was very present in her chart. And it did bode really well for a period of fertility, of growth, of success, of happiness. So anyway, the consultation was finished, and I suppose 6 months later, I had a call from her, and she said to me, well, I'm very disappointed, Penny. I was so looking forward to this period of growth and everything happening for the good. I could hardly wait. And the period in question was sort of late January through to the kind of mid-February period. And she said, absolutely nothing happened. Nothing. Big fat zero. And I said, oh, that was really extraordinary. So she continued. She said, I didn't meet anyone. I didn't start a love affair. My ex didn't come back to me. My love life is a complete zero. So I said, oh, okay, well, I didn't actually mean that this was addressed to a relationship, I said, did anything else happen in that space of time that you would say was really, it enlarged your life, brought joy to you, success even? So she said, no, I don't think so. Oh, she said, oh, wait a minute. Oh, yeah, I remember. Yes, I was up for a BAFTA award and I won. So it's perspective, isn't it? And we are all guilty of wanting something to happen in our lives, whether it's a relationship, a baby, a house, a job. And we're all incredibly focused on that one thing. So when we feel there's some good planets coming along, especially Jupiter, we think, oh, I'm going to sell a house. I'm going to get pregnant. I'm going to make a fortune. I'm going to fall in love. I'm going to get married. And so we get very disappointed when Jupiter doesn't deliver the goods. But I promise you, somewhere Jupiter is working hard for you, and there will be some part of your life that's going to be of great benefit as Jupiter passes through or across your planets. So that's it for this video, and I look forward to speaking to you in a couple of weeks' time. In the meantime, take care.